Hello there and welcome. This is Al24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. Thousands of firefighters are continuing to battle wildfires in Portugal, Spain and France as heat wave shows no sign of easing. Russia said on Saturday its forces would step up military operations in Ukraine in all operational areas. A Ukrainian cargo plane carrying munitions from Serbia to Bangladesh crashed near the city of Kavala in northern Greece late on Saturday. President Abdelmajid Tebboune chairs on Sunday a cabinet meeting to consider and approve the Complementary Finance Bill 2022. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host Abdurrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. First, in our topical stories, Europe is witnessing all-time temperature records that reached 40 degrees Celsius across many European cities amid a persistent heat wave across Western Europe. The heat wave, showing no sign of easing, has caused wildfires in Portugal, Spain and France, where many civilians were evacuated and thousands of firefighters are continuing to battle the wildfires. As the heat wave shows no signs of easing, thousands of firemen are still battling fires in Portugal, Spain and France. A pilot from northern Portugal died in Fozacoa region close to the Spanish border when his water-bombing aircraft crashed, according to Portuguese officials. At least 238 individuals have passed away from heat-related causes in previous week. Firefighters battled blazes on the Greek island of Crete on Saturday after several fires have spread on the island since Friday. The fire service said 120 firefighters were tackling the flames, assisted by 5 helicopters, while some villages evacuated on the initiative of the local authorities. Local media has reported the luxury villas rented by tourists were also evacuated, and the fire service cannot give an estimated on the damage at the point. However, high winds prevail and temperatures are rising. Southeast Europe endured the 6th day of the summer heat wave on Saturday that has triggered devastating forest fires as part of the continent, braced for new temperature records early this week. Marwa Bdewa.
After the second warmest June on record, Western Europe is bracing for its second dangerous heat wave of the summer. The UK, Portugal, Spain and France are facing record-breaking temperatures this week with little relief in sight. Dozens of wildfires raged in Spain on Sunday, cutting off roads and forcing thousands of people to be evacuated from their homes as scorching summer temperatures showed no sign of reduction. Firefighters battled the wildfire through the night, and helicopters dropped water onto the flames on Sunday. The UK Met Office issued a rare amber extreme heat warning for Sunday, as hot temperatures look to build later this week for much of England and Wales.
It's been very hot here in the UK for a number of days now, but as we're looking towards the weekend and certainly Monday and Tuesday, we're looking at these temperatures in the low 30s, which is pretty high for the UK. And there is still this possibility of, reaching up towards 40 degrees and breaking those records that we have here in the UK. And that's very frightening in a way that even some of the computer models are picking up these extremely high temperatures.
The chief executive of the country's College of Paramedics told Britain's Sky News that the unprecedented high temperatures would be vicious and that the public should refrain from trying to enjoy the sunshine in a normal way.
But we could see people who are vulnerable, young people, elderly, frail people living with dementia who really do suffer. This isn't like a a lovely hot day where we can put a bit of sunscreen on and go out and enjoy, a swim and a meal outside. This is serious heat that could actually ultimately end in people's death because it is so ferocious. And we're just not set up for that sort of heat in this country.
In southeastern France, wildfires forced thousands of people to be evacuated from their homes. About 14,000 people had been evacuated from France's Gironde region by Saturday afternoon as more than 1,200 firefighters battled to bring the flames under control. The heat poses a serious health risk as people will need to take precautions to avoid heat-related illness. Extreme heat is also endangering the environment and homes, with wildfires raging across Europe.
Not only Europe, but Asia as well, knows a major heat wave in China. Many cities are facing a severe increase in temperature these days. The Chinese Meteorological Department has issued a red alert for 68 cities across the country. This includes major cities such as Shanghai and Nanjing. According to Meteorological Department, the temperatures in the 68 cities may cross 40 degrees Celsius. A controversial French-mediated agreement that seeks to resolve a conflict with Bulgaria and pave the path for EU membership negotiations has received support of North Macedonia lawmakers.
After 3 consecutive days of debate, the Parliament of North Macedonia voted to end the long-standing dispute with Bulgaria, thus unblocking its way to the European Union membership talks. 68 out of 120 members of the parliament voted in favor of the draft conclusions, while opposition lawmakers did not participate in the vote and left the room. The conclusions gave clear directions to the government on what to negotiate during the process of accession to the EU, demanding respect to the identity, language, cultural and historical characteristics of North Macedonians. Earlier, the European Commission President urged lawmakers to back the proposal.
The vote paves the way for opening the accession negotiations rapidly. The future of your country is in the European Union, and Europe is not complete without North Macedonia.
Bulgaria has been blocking North Macedonia's efforts to join the EU and vetoed the country's EU integration bid, demanding its acceptance that the language of North Macedonia is derived from Bulgarian. However, on June 24, Bulgaria decided to lift its 2-year veto on North Macedonia's EU membership bid. The deal will now lift Bulgaria's 2-year veto on North Macedonia's EU membership. North Macedonia and neighboring Albania have been waiting since March 2020 to hold their first intergovernmental meetings with the EU.
Russian forces have launched another series of airstrikes on Ukraine, and 6 people at least have been killed. The Ukrainian authorities stated that Russian armed forces have expanded their missile strikes to other regions of the country, while Russia is pushing forward to expand their territory of domination.
The Russian army still dominates the situation in Ukraine and most eastern region. Russian troops have achieved substantial advancement towards the internal regions despite the tough resistance Ukraine is showing. Footage of the Russian Defense Ministry shows that troops have stepped up operations across Ukrainian territory, as the head of the Russian military gave necessary instructions to further intensify the actions of units in all operational areas.
He's in agony. Putin is, since he can do nothing with our military. He keeps striking. It's children. What are you doing? A double-decker was just bombed on the square. I don't know. This is terrible. Terrible. He must have no heart.
At least 3 civilians were killed and 3 more were injured in a Russian rocket strike on the northern Ukrainian city of Chuiv in the early hours of Saturday. Elsewhere in the town, rockets also landed at an elementary school and a building materials store. However, no victims were reported. In Kharkiv, 3 people were killed during a missile strike on a village, destroying 2 buildings and damaging a local hospital.
This war isn't like anything else. When rockets rain on sleeping people at 3 a.m. and not even shells, rockets, and no one can understand what to do with it.
Ukraine's Interior Ministry stated on Friday that Russian forces have conducted more than 17,000 strikes on civilian targets during the war, killing thousands of fighters and civilians and driving millions from their homes.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is offering Ukrainians a fast track to Russian citizenship. In May, 3 months after Russia started its military operation in Ukraine, the fast track procedures was expanded to include people living in Zaporizhzhia and Kherson areas, largely under Russian control. The first Russian passports were reportedly handed out 3 months ago. The last decree of the Russian president made numbers of Ukrainians queue up to apply for Russian passport and nationality.
The air measurements at the moment have not shown anything, but nonetheless, instability in the field was observed.
A cargo plane with 8 people on board crashed in Wildfires in field near the city of Kavala in northern Greece late on Saturday. It was not clear what the aircraft cargo was, but the Special Disaster Response Unit was investigating the scene, and fire brigade officials said that they were treating the cargo as dangerous material. Witnesses said explosions could be heard from burning plane after it crashed.
The air measurements at the moment have not shown anything, but nonetheless, instability in the field was observed. In other words, intense smoke and heat, as well as white substance that we do not recognize, so a Special Armed Forces team has to inform us of what it is and whether we can enter the field.
The White House said it believes Russia is turning to Iran to provide it with hundreds of unnamed vehicles, including weapons-capable drones, for use in its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said it was unclear whether Iran had already provided any of unnamed systems to Russia, but said that the U.S. has information that indicates Iran is preparing to train Russian forces to use them as soon as this month.
Our information further indicates that Iran is preparing to train Russian forces to use these UAVs, with initial training sessions slated to begin as soon as early July. It's unclear whether Iran has delivered any of these UAVs to Russia already, but this is just one example of how Russia is looking to countries like Iran for capabilities that are also being used, I might add.
Still with Iran, that imposed sanctions on 61 more Americans over their support for foreign-based dissident Iranian groups like the IMEK, as month of talks to revive a 2015 nuclear deal remained at an impasse. The blacklist by Iran's foreign ministry include the ex-secretary of state and former President Donald Trump's personal attorney and former security advisor. Biden's administration said that it will protect and support all Americans despite any disagreements over politics. The group of 20 major economies' finance chiefs reached a strong consensus in issues including global food security at a 2-day meeting in Indonesia on Saturday, but remain divided over the conflict in Ukraine. Indonesian Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawat has said in a closing news conference that there were still differences within the G20 on issues related to the war.
I think this is the best result in which all member countries, including also the international organization, they are very much aware that the world needs even more and more collaboration, because we also realize that almost all issues, no country, no matter where they are, where their position, how strong, how high, how rich, they cannot solve this problem alone.
Gunmen believed to be separatist rebel killed 10 traders and wounded 2 others in an attack Saturday in Indonesia's restive Papua province. Clashes have escalated in the country's estimate province since last year, when rebels set fire to several schools and killed 2 teachers. Attackers were believed to be members of the West Papua Liberation Army, the military wing of a Free Papua organization. About 20 gunmen stormed the village of Nogalatia in Nodoga district while a grocer was preparing to open his wares.
Violent attacks were carried out by an armed criminal group. against civilians in a village in the district of Ndunga, where the victims were shot and stabbed. The total number of victims is 12 people. 10 of them were killed and 2 others were injured. One of them is a priest.
Crisis in Sri Lanka has reached its 100-day. People from protest movements gathered to do a candle in memory of killed people during the demonstrations, which caused the fall of President Rajapaksa, blamed for mismanagement and the financial crisis in the country. Nabil Khazini.
A vigil in memory of those who died in the recent political struggle in Sri Lanka. People gathering here in this area of the capital Colombo to light a candle for every lost companion during the anti-government protests.
What is happening here is that we are commemorating our dear fallen heroes, our brothers and sisters who sacrificed their lives in the course of this struggle. As you can remember, when 99 days ago when we began this struggle on the April 9th on the Goldface Green, we had hope, we had a dream. We had the determination that we would kick away the worst ever ruler to ever rule this country, that is Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
An unprecedented crisis and 100 days of political struggle that changed the image in Sri Lanka. This footage of crowds storming the official residences of the president and forcing him to flee the country have made the headlines around the world in the last days. Now, as the movement reaches day 100, the outcome, a president emailing his resignation, eyes turning their sights on his successor, and a call for an all-party meeting to come together on a round table to discuss the worst economic crisis to hit the country since its independence.
I think the point that has to be made is that we need political stability to form the basis of our economic recovery. And political stability means that you have to have leadership in the country that is trusted and people have confidence in it. That, unfortunately, is where Ranil Wickremesinghe falls short.
Yet for many, removing Rajapaksa from power is just the first step to revolutionizing politics in Sri Lanka. Uncertainty remains dominant in the country. 6 million people, more than a quarter of the population, now face food insecurity. The stalls are emptying, food prices are exploding, and the situation is expected to deteriorate even more.
You also need a government that is willing and able to speak to the people and carry them along with it and say, look, yes, I know it's tough. We have got ourselves into this situation. This is what we're doing to get ourselves out of it. This is a projective timeline in terms of how we can get out of it. It's a government that the people can trust and have confidence in.
The political crisis is furthering the economic mess that the country is in. This instability may delay progress on negotiations with the International Monetary Fund for a bailout package.
Around 1,000 Hungarians demonstrated against Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government on Saturday in the latest of series demonstrations this week since the right-wing Fidesz party passed legislation sharply raising taxes on small firms. Nationalist Orban is facing his toughest challenge yet since taking power in 2010 landslide, with inflation at its highest in 2 decades. President Abdelmajid Tebboune chairs on Sunday a cabinet meeting to consider and approve the Complementary Finance Bill 2022. The Algerian cabinet is considering a draft supplementary finance law for the current year. A statement by the Algerian presidency indicates that the meeting deals with the study and ratification of the draft basic law for the self-employed. A group of tuk-tuk drivers staged at a strike in Nouakchott on Saturday morning, protesting against fuel prices increases. Protesters parked their vehicles at the Madrid Road Forum, calling on the authorities to reverse the price increase or allow them to increase passengers' fare.
من بداية الأزمة
The level of support that had been provided had created a problem for the government and created new spending items, as it had contributed to encouraging smuggling of such materials to neighboring countries because of the price difference, imposing new spending items to prevent such smuggling and put an end to support for non-Mauritanians. Although support had been reduced, the price difference remained as some neighboring countries applied the real price.
And to have clear idea over the situation, I'm joined live by Mr. Abdelnour Toumi, who is a Maghreb studies expert from France. Mr. Abdelnour, how can you explain these soaring energy prices? Is it only related to Ukraine war, or these high prices of the fuel was already coming ahead before the war in Ukraine?
Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for having me on the show. Yes, it is, and as you stated, it is related to the ongoing war in Ukraine and how the oil and gas, therefore energy, is shaping the dynamic of geopolitics and also impacting domestic politics as well. And this is why, again, when we saw the rise of the oil and gas price in Mauritania, it's not the only country who is affected by this. And adding to that, there is this energy security, and there are other elements into that are related, which is, for instance, the food security as well. And we are not saying much about this these days. And there is the pandemic, the COVID-19 is still striking this country that is actually sandwiched between the north and the south, therefore its shores on the Atlantic and its roots on the Sahara, and how, again, the regional politics and notably what is going on in the Sahel has affected also the Mauritanian politics as well. And so this what is impacting directly the outcome of the talk that was held last week between the Mauritanian authorities and the opposition, which the latter has actually warned the authorities for the possibility of and the instability of the to impact the civil peace in the entire country. So therefore, Mauritania, it is an interesting country, and it is also a major country in the Maghreb, so that in the Sahel, and can play, even though it's a small country, but has a potential to be or to position itself in the posture of this dynamic that is shaping the entire geopolitics of the world order. And not just, speaking of this, just this weekend in the Jeddah summit, the US and the GCC, adding Egypt and Jordan and Iraq, and how this is impacting a great deal the entire energy policy, therefore security. So to some extent, the ongoing war now in Ukraine, and we had spoken about this early when the crisis broke last February, and with all this avalanche of the sanctions that had or still, being imposed on President Putin, but it's not having any impact. To the contrary, we are already starting to see the boomerang effect on European countries, and notably the EU leaders. And we saw the crisis in Italy and in Germany also. Therefore, is affecting even here in France. And just on 2 days ago, President Macron himself in an interview with the local TV has said,
Thank you ever so much.
The French to be sober and to get ready for very, very tough and harsh.
Thank you ever so much, Mr. Abdel Nourtoumi, for this explanation. Mr. Abdel Nourtoumi, thank you ever so much for this explanation. Now moving on, the new French Minister for the Armed Forces, Sébastien Lecornu, passed through Ivory Coast after a visit to Niger and met the Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara in Abidjan. The visit was aimed at discussing the situation of security in Africa, particularly in the Sahel-Saharan Strip, which witnessing high tension and security instability. That's all what we have for now. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye-bye.